Boy, what a difference a month makes. Here in Los Angeles, the pandemic has definitely taken a turn for the better. The New York Times is reporting an average of only 2 daily cases per 100,000 people here in LA, and there have been only 5 deaths in the past week. Good news all around, and the reason why things here are really starting to open up again. It has me thinking about what the future has to offer for the first time in a really long time. Small businesses, especially in food services, were clobbered by COVID, but as the world gets better, things are beginning to change. It's possible to go sit down inside a coffee shop, although still at a controlled rate. We can go meet others who've had their vaccine and not have to wear a mask anymore. An excellent turn of events, although I admit I'm still going to be careful when I'm out in a busy public place. And I actually allowed myself the luxury of a handshake and an off-Zoom happy hour with a friend the other day. My hope for the near future is to see those businesses that have survived this long start to see their world come back, and that new businesses start to feel confident to open up and give it a go again. I also hope that the trend of having more outdoor spaces dedicated to things like outdoor dining continues beyond the pandemic restrictions, because while it's a small thing for most of us, it certainly adds a more pleasant experience option to our lives. Just think, something good coming out of all this misery. Now, have you been able to start opening up your life again? What's the relief valve you've turned in your life to get going these days? Whatever that may be, we should all be sure to go out when we can, and in the safest way possible, patronize those local businesses we care about. They need all the love we can offer them right now. Choi is the owner of Found Coffee, a specialty coffee shop in the Eagle Rock neighborhood of Los Angeles, which recently celebrated its 6th year in business, despite the pandemic. Prior to being an entrepreneur, Annie worked in television post-production on notable shows such as Keeping Up with the Kardashians and Project Runway All-Stars. She loves telling stories and has a passion for gathering community. On her days off, she enjoys traveling, cuddling with her pop, Frankie, and going to other coffee shops while she's reading nonfiction literature. My guest today is Annie Choi. Hi, Annie. Welcome to the
Hi.
podcast. Tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I am a small business owner. I own a specialty coffee shop in the Eagle Rock neighborhood of Los Angeles. It's called Found Coffee. And actually, this past weekend, we're recording in mid-April, but this past weekend, we just celebrated 6 years of being in business. And so that was a big victory.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
terrific. Yeah, especially the way the last year's gone, I bet.
I feel like after the last year of running a small business during the pandemic, that in and of itself is a victory and cause for celebration. And
Yeah.
it felt like just a huge sigh of relief to even get to 6 years.
Do you roast your own coffee?
No, so we're actually known to be a multi-roastery, which means that I carry different roasters. And
Okay.
my mission and vision for the shop is that we carry California roasters only. And during the pandemic, we actually had to pivot, as all businesses had to pivot. And so I actually started a travel series of roasters. And so I diverted a little bit from carrying only California roasters only. And so right now we
Okay.
carry 2 international roasters, just so that we can, allow our customers to feel like they're kind of traveling in a time when we can't. And so I have a roaster from Munich and I have a roaster from Copenhagen. So that's been really fun too.
Neat.
Mhm.
How do you find a roaster? Do you go out and interview different companies? How do you do it?
I love actually owning a small business. You'll have a lot of people who send you samples, but I'm pretty
Mm-hmm.
particular about who I carry, and it's just basically anything that I serve, I have to like. And so I these are roasters that I've known for many, many years. These are some roasters that I've been introduced to just through samples. And so, yeah, it's been kind of a mixture of how I select roasters. One of my mainstay roasters is Demi-Toss, and that's actually where I had my coffee training. And so I will always carry Demi-Toss. And so, yeah.
Okay. What do you mean when you say coffee training?
Oh, so I just to give a background on my personal history, I actually didn't start in
Yeah.
coffee. I used to work in the television post-production industry. And so
Ah,
I worked on some pretty well-known television shows in reality TV. And so my
okay.
last shows in the industry were Keeping Up with the Kardashians and Project Runway.
Okay.
And so I worked in editing, and so I didn't know anything about the coffee world except that I just loved being in coffee shops. I love the ambiance of coffee shops, and when I entered into the coffee industry, I didn't know what it was to be a barista, and so I had to learn, from the bottom up. So I remember my first shift as an intern at Demi-Toss, I actually washed dishes for 3 hours. And that's
That's
very
from the bottom
much,
up.
yeah, that's very much part of the training and what I still do to this day as an owner. And
Yeah.
so, I learned how to steam the milk correctly. I learned how to pull an espresso shot. I learned how to brew the coffee in different ways, in addition to how to clean the machines
Yeah.
correctly, how to clean the shop correctly, all of that.
Okay.
So that's the coffee training that I
Okay.
got.
What made you decide to leave the entertainment business to go into coffee?
Entertainment industry was definitely not congruent to who I was. I actually did not thrive as an individual staring at a screen for 12, 14, 16 hours a day.
Okay.
And I realized I was a lot more social than what an editor's life was actually.
Yeah.
So, instead of being in an editing bay for so long, I actually love connecting with humans. And when I think back to my career in the entertainment industry, I think fondly of the people that I worked with,
Yeah.
but I don't really, I
Yeah.
didn't love the technical aspects of editing and all of that.
Did you train for that in like school, or is that what your plan was?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was a communications major. I graduated from UC San Diego. And in my last year at UCSD,
Okay.
I took an editing course and I was like, oh, this is great. I think this is what I want to do. And then I ended up going to a trade school for editing. And I treated that as my grad school. And so I had the training in Avid and Final Cut Pro.
Okay.
Um, and then I entered the
Okay.
industry.
And coffee was just your first love, and that's how you found your way over to there?
I just always loved being in coffee shops. It was my hobby, coffee shop hopping, checking out different ones.
Okay.
I wouldn't call it a first love, but I think I always wanted to open a coffee shop, throughout my life. I just didn't know how to.
And here you are.
Yeah.
So you've been in business for 6 years. How was the business doing prior to the pandemic?
It was thriving. I was really grateful. Definitely first year is really, really hard just in any small business.
Hmm.
But once we had hit that 2 year mark, I think I was like, okay, I think this can definitely be successful. Because I don't know if you
Yeah.
know this, Jeff, but about like 90% of food businesses fail within the first 2 years.
Wow. That's a high number.
Yeah. So after we, surpassed that 2 year mark, I felt successful from that status point. But then also, I remember when I actually hired managers at, about a year and a half in, that's when I also knew that I was, on the way to success too, because I didn't have to be there every single day, all day, every day.
Yeah.
And so, we were doing really well. We're the only specialty coffee shop in Eagle Rock,
Okay.
in this little neighborhood. And so that goes for us, that's definitely a great thing going for us.
Okay.
And then the pandemic hit and it was really tough.
Yeah, I'll bet. Do you have like a food service in the coffee shop as well, or do you just do cakes or?
So we carry, we don't make any food on site. And so we carry
Okay.
most, all third party vendors. And so we have a pastry vendor that delivers to us every day.
Okay. Ok. And Eagle Rock is mostly residential. Talk a little bit about the neighborhood and what the makeup of it is.
Yeah, Eagle Rock is full of creatives. I did a lot of research going into before opening the shop, and
Okay.
it's a lot of young families. And so, parents need coffee,
Yes.
especially with young kids.
Yes. Yes.
And there's a lot of creatives, a lot of young professionals. And so I knew that the space would allow for like people who needed to meet with other people, have meetings there inside the shop.
Right.
Um, I didn't reach out, particularly to the student population, but there are a few colleges nearby too, and so we have a smattering of students
Oh, okay.
that come through. Yeah.
So again, before the pandemic, were you seeing a lot of people who were just kind of settling in and working from inside the coffee shop all day, or taking meetings and things like that?
Yeah, a lot of meetings. One of the unique things that I love about my shop is that I used to only have one communal table because I want community to be found there. That's a really big reason why it's called Found Coffee. And I
Okay.
saw that communal table was such a big hit with the community. And so I actually
Yeah.
added a second one. And I loved seeing, we actually had, before the pandemic, there was a group of men who used to call themselves the brochel, so a bro social.
Nice.
And the brochel will meet every Thursday. And it was like, 6 to 10 individuals that would come and meet, make their that communal
Yeah.
table their home. And so, and then you would see people working on scripts and
Okay.
doing laptop work and
Yeah.
all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. It's very cool. I grew up in New York City, and there was no coffee culture in New York back in the
Yeah.
70s and 80s and 90s when I was growing up there. Right, coffee culture in New York was, the little blue and white paper cups that have the Greek
Right.
printing on them that you got from the bodega down at the corner. Um,
Right.
and I remember traveling to Paris back in 19, no, it was around 2000. And that was the first time I experienced what it was like to have a real cafe kind of
Hmm.
world where, it was part of the day intentionally to go sit out with a cup of coffee, people watch or do whatever you wanted to do. And it changed my,
Yeah, that's something that I miss.
yeah, it changed my outlook on the world, right? Because when I started to be home all the time, I made sure I spent days, whether it was sitting out at Starbucks, or finding, we have a couple of small independent coffee houses here in the South Bay area where I live,
Hmm.
but it's mostly the bigger chains,
Right.
Starbucks, Pete's. For me, we have a smaller chain here, Clatch,
Oh, yes, yes. I know Clutch. Uh-huh.
and so but it's always nice to go find one of those places, sit down, and then just be able to work in that environment.
Right.
And I'm glad that this country has started to take on more of that culture, though I somehow it's probably against our work ethic, because as Americans it's like going to the office and focus for 10
Right.
hours a day. So you had to close inside service for the pandemic, I assume, right? Because pretty much everything did.
Correct.
You
Yeah, and just to go to a point of what you're saying, I used to think before I owned a coffee shop, and actually the first few years of owning the coffee shop, I was wondering like, do people even work in LA? How do they
Yeah,
even like, you know,
yeah, it's
how do
very
they
true.
have the time to go to a coffee shop? But I've noticed that a lot of people find their most productive hours actually in the coffee shop. And so that was
Yeah,
really heartwarming to me, that I was able to provide that space. And so when the pandemic hit, we had to, get rid of all seating. We had to get rid of ceramic four-tier cups and mugs. So my paper goods, that cost definitely skyrocketed. And it was interesting throughout the
yeah,
pandemic. A lot of paper goods actually were out of stock or short in the country,
yeah.
and so we would not have certain supplies.
Yes, in the early days, they were very personal paper goods, right?
Yeah, like for us, it was like, those drink carrier trays, the 4 cup carrier trays. I could not
Hmm.
find those for the life of me for a few weeks. And it's because they were short everywhere. And so these are certain challenges that we did not anticipate, you know, but the whole
Yeah.
country was dealing with it.
Did I mean, obviously the business had to shift to more of a takeout kind of thing. How
Hmm.
did that work out for you? What was the percentage of business drop off really dramatic and stay that way for a long time?
So in March 2020, when we got the first lockdown orders, I looked back at our sales and we were 20 to 30% of normal sales. It was rough.
Oh,
It was so
okay.
rough. And
Okay.
for us, like, I had to scale back on so many things. I had to scale back on how many pastries we got every day, you know,
Yeah.
stuff like that. I had to scale back on my team's hours, my staff's payroll hours. And
Yeah.
thankfully, coffee is still a takeaway culture for certain people. And so I didn't
Okay.
have to adapt too much in that sense, but it was a loss in the sense that we didn't have a bustling, busy, buzzing coffee shop, you know? And
Yeah. Yeah.
and that was sad. That was definitely really, really sad. And I think by the time it came to be around like May, June, things started picking up again. And then come, November, December, when the cases were super high, it dropped again.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people were
Yeah.
staying home, and so I actually made the pretty difficult decision, just to save on costs and to give my team a break, because the majority of my team stayed employed, throughout the whole thing. We actually closed for
Yeah.
2 weeks for a holiday, for a Christmas holiday. And I had never done that in the past.
Okay.
And it was a hard decision, but I also felt like I was protecting my team too. While the cases were so high,
Yeah.
I didn't want them to be exposed.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, numbers in terms of sales have not reverted back to normal. It's still slower than
Okay.
normal, but I'm still very thankful that we've survived the last year. And the fact that we're still
Yeah.
open is a major blessing.
Yes. Yes. Were you able to do any kind of like outdoor seating or that kind of thing as a compensation for some of the inside space you lost?
Unfortunately for us, we don't have an outdoor seating area. We only have like a parking lot. And I am just
Okay.
a little bit weary to barricade off a spot, because our lot, a lot of people use it as a thoroughfare. And I don't like,
Okay.
I just don't want that liability of what if someone gets hurt. It's on the responsibility of the business owner and not the landlord in my lease to provide that kind of stuff. And so I didn't want to
Okay.
invest into expensive barriers if it was going to be temporary. So, I haven't done it yet, and the majority of the people have not asked for it, and so I'm still holding off.
Okay. Did you get involved with any of like delivery services? Did you start delivering coffee to people or is it still mostly a takeout?
I personally did it for my friends, but I
Okay.
didn't sign up for anything like DoorDash or anything like that, because they just take such a huge percentage. And with coffee, there's not that
Yeah.
much margin anyway, and so for me, it wasn't
Okay.
worth it.
Okay. How's your family holding up through all of this over the course of the last year?
So for me, I'm single, but I have elderly parents, and I was
Mhm.
just so grateful that they were fully vaccinated about a month ago. And
Okay.
so that was just a huge relief. And then I was the last one in my team to get fully vaccinated. So my entire team is fully vaccinated now. My parents are
Good.
retired, and so they don't have a workplace to go to. But, in their early years of retirement, my mom was going to like an art class, 3 times a week, and that had to be halted. And so I
Yeah.
feel like socially, our
Yeah.
older population, it's really hard on them.
Yes. My dad was in an assisted living facility through
Mm.
most of this. Unfortunately, he passed away while he was there.
Oh my
And
goodness, I'm
what
so
made
sorry.
it all the more difficult, oh, thank you. What made it all the more difficult was we hadn't been able to actually get in to see him in like 6 months because of the pandemic. And just having the ability to communicate with him was difficult because he wasn't able to really use a cell phone very well. So we couldn't just talk whenever we wanted to. It had to be a nurse helping him out. So yeah, it was really difficult having that kind of isolation and that separation for so
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know it's thankfully, my parents were part of my pod. Like I didn't have much of a pod, in the beginning.
yeah.
It was like my parents and my older sister, and that was pretty much it. And so I was able to see them, but I did see that not seeing their friends was
Mm-hmm.
taking a toll on them.
Oh, sure. I'll bet. I'll
And
bet.
so,
Okay.
and then same for me too. Like in the beginning, I wanted to make sure that my staff was making a livable wage. And so I took myself off the schedule completely for about the first month. I would still
Okay.
obviously go in, but because we didn't know what was going on with the pandemic and I have asthma, I was pretty isolated, And so
Yeah.
I that was a scary, anxious time because you just didn't know. There was like
Yeah.
nothing happening
Yeah.
and everything happening. And I think as a small
Yeah.
business owner, what also was frustrating at the time was that like we would get notices from the government at the same time as everyone else, and it was at the drop of a hat. And we were expected
Yeah.
to change protocol within 2 seconds. I remember when we got our first like health order from the health department, it was 17 pages long. And I was like, I'm not implementing this in 24 hours, guys.
Huh. Huh.
Like 17
Huh.
pages, this
That's
is
amazing.
crazy. So for me, it was let's continue full steam as we're able, but in the
Yeah.
safest way possible.
What was the public like through all of this? Your customers coming in, you deal with a lot of people coming back and forth through a business like this. Were they all mask compliant? Was everybody doing the social distancing and doing the right thing? Did you have any cases of people who felt, the need not to behave?
We we are very, very fortunate because our community here is very caring and concerned about the other.
Yeah.
Of course, you have the one or two non-compliant people, but the majority of my customers are regulars, and so they know the rules, which is great.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but I definitely had to I became like a shop of signs. Like I had to be like, do not sit here. Please
Yeah.
use your passcode for your Apple Pay. Like things that
Yeah.
people weren't remembering. And they would order by bringing their mask down. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, that's not the point, guys. Like let's just
Yeah.
have the mask
Yeah.
on the whole time. Um, and
Yeah.
when we had to
Yep.
restrict occupancy inside the shop, it was like 3 customers at a time. And so that was definitely harder
Okay.
to manage because it was like the flow was different. Um, but
Yeah.
come January of this year, of 2021, we decided to not allow customers inside, and we just took orders at the door just to safe shield
Okay.
everyone again. Yeah. So lots of changes, lots of changes.
But hey, it's getting better, right? I got my second shot this past Saturday. Now everybody in my house, except for my son who gets his second shot tomorrow, is fully vaccinated.
Awesome.
Um, what's the next 6 months feel like for you?
You know, I was looking at that question when you sent it in the email, and my first
Yeah.
reaction is, I don't know. Like I don't know because I see that there are cases rising. Like I have a few friends that are doctors, and so they're saying like hospitalizations are actually increasing for the first time in 2 months.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm doing what I need to do slowly and methodically and as sensibly as I can. So
Okay.
my first step is extending our hours slightly, starting next week. And then
Okay.
come May, then we'll open up for people to come in and order again since it's going to be hot, outside.
Right.
And then
Yep.
do I think that we're going to have seating inside? I don't know because, 25% capacity at my shop is like 3 people. Is that worth it? Probably not,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So
Uh,
I
yeah.
think takeout continuously, obviously, which is I'm so thankful that we can. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope that we are, 0 cases at the end of 6 months, but I just don't know.
Yeah. Do you get a sense of what the steady state will be? Let's say we get back to a world where, I don't know that COVID ever fully goes away, but it becomes like the regular flu, right? We're taking a shot every year. It keeps the majority of people from getting seriously sick. I mean,
Hmm.
I personally have kind of felt like a lot of the precautions we've done over the course of the last year were about protecting the hospitals from reaching overflow, right?
Right.
And so we get it under control. What's the new normal look like for you and your business, do you think?
I had to streamline business operations so much last year. And it
Yeah.
made me rethink how to run my business. And as much as I want to extend hours, late into the night. I mean, we closed at 6 p.m. prior to pandemic. I don't see
Yeah.
myself ever opening up past 4 p.m. ever again.
Okay.
And it's made me think smartly for the shop in terms of fiscal responsibility as a business owner while still,
Yeah.
providing the hours for my team. But
Okay.
I do think that we will have a bustling coffee shop again. I think it's
Yeah.
probably going to be 2022. When the pandemic started,
Okay.
I was like, I don't think we're going to go back to, I think this is going to be 18 months of this,
Okay.
and 18 months is like
Okay.
what, end of this year, right? So I do
Yeah.
think that we will go back to a bustling coffee shop. I really crave it. I just personally I have to do
Yeah.
undo some of my anxieties that have
Yeah.
been onset because of the pandemic.
Sure. No, I understand that. I'm waiting for that first time of going in and sitting down inside a restaurant again, and actually coming into contact with people without having a mask on again, and
Right.
have all of these anxieties built up in the back of my head about, well, what's that really going to feel like? Am I going to be
Right.
comfortable doing it? So yeah, it's a different world now than it used to be.
I hugged a fully vaccinated person when I was fully vaccinated, and it was like so glorious. And
Yeah.
I think that's what's been lost is like this human touch and this human
Yeah.
connection. And
Yeah.
that's what I really look forward to. I hope that that's the new normal, human
Yes.
connection.
Yeah, so do I. It sounds a little strange when I say it out loud, but I actually miss shaking hands with people. Just that
Yeah.
contact is something I hope comes back. I agree with that. How can we plug your business?
Oh, so I mainly update our Instagram. And so our
Okay.
Instagram handle is at Found Coffee LA. And I will
Okay.
post different pop ups and, do announcements there. And so
Cool. And you just had a party for the 6th anniversary. How did that go?
that was great. We had a lot of people coming through that we haven't seen in a while, and it
Yeah.
felt very busy, very full. It was great to see a lot of
Okay.
faces, even though they're all under masks.
Yes. Very cool. Annie,
Yeah.
thank you for taking the time out to talk to me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.